No? Good. Okay. Let me get some things here situated. All right. Okay, so I'm going to pin my screen for just a second just to show you. All right, so next week, this is how we'll do it. We'll do about a 5 to 10 minute introduction where Ryan and Erica and myself and a few others will say a few things just to kind of lead off, similar to what we did on the kickoff session at the beginning of this. From there, we'll hand it off to the first team that's going to go, and we're just going to go in order, 1, 2, 3. We're going to do that same thing tonight. First team will go. You'll have your own. This is all going to be virtual, by the way, because it's still with a new variant coming in and all this other stuff. We decided not to even try it. So it's all going to be virtual, obviously, at this point. So you'll be maintaining your own deck, doing your own forward and backwards navigation like you have been doing. So I'll hand over sharing to you beforehand. And you need to get your stuff ready to share that presentation right after we make the announcement. From that point, as soon as you start talking, I'm going to start the clock. You'll see a clock just like this one show up right here in this bottom left-hand corner of my screen, and it will count down 7 minutes. Okay. So once that's done, then that will stop. We'll reset, and then we'll go to Q&A, and another clock will start. Okay. And so that clock is also 7 minutes. We're going to try to keep the the questions from the panel to around 7 minutes, just so we can kind of get everything done within an hour and 15 minutes. But if the questions are going well and the panel keeps asking some drill down things and everything's going, we won't try to stop it, but we'll curtail it at the end of that question asked, and then move on to the next team. We'll make an introduction to the next team, just like we did the first one. Same process. First clock will start. It'll be your 7 minute pitch clock, and then we'll go into Q&A. All right. Any questions about that? Okay. Okay. So who will be presenting for team 1 tonight and next week?
So I and Cody will be presenting.
Who is going to be sharing their screen?
I'll share my screen.
Okay. I'm sorry. Who was saying that?
Jennifer.
Jennifer. Okay. So I'm going to hand you, let me write that down. Team 1, Jennifer, co-host. Okay. All right. Now you are a co-host.
Okay.
And just let me know that you are, yep, okay.
Okay, I'm going to try something really quick so I can share this and make sure I can see my.
Yeah, this week, look, I'm going to start the clock when you're ready. So if you want to try going to full screen, do different things, go ahead and get this out of the way now.
It's not let me move this. Can you see the speaker notes here currently?
Yeah, we can.
Or can you just see? Okay.
Well, I mean, we see speaker notes. I don't see any notes in there for slide 1.
Well, I was trying to figure out if I can move that to my other screen so I can see these. If I can't, that's fine. But now I can't actually seem to exit out of this. Okay, let me stop sharing that for just a second.
This is why we practice, right?
Yeah, this is the thing I needed to check. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, does that work?
We see a full screen of your presentation deck. Yep, that will work just fine.
Yay, okay, sweet. Well, then I'm ready to go if you are ready to start timing.
As soon as you start talking.
Okay, so chronic disease represents a major burden to the public, and that burden was one that's likely not fully recognized. You might be surprised to learn that 6 in 10 adults in the US have a chronic disease, which means that either you know many people living with a chronic disease or you are in fact one of them. So the economic burden of chronic disease is immense. 3 of every $4 spent on healthcare is for a chronic disease. And 7 out of 10 deaths are the result of a chronic disease. So simply put, we need interventions to address the significant burden of chronic disease. So there's a new emerging class of therapeutics, what we term translational gene therapies, and they represent a promising new avenue for treating chronic diseases. And translational gene therapies can achieve long-lasting or even curative effects by correcting the underlying genetic problem. So it's very exciting because there's a whole slew of chronic diseases like cancers, neurodegenerative diseases, and vascular diseases that could benefit immensely from translational gene therapies. And there's significant preclinical evidence to this point, but all of these therapies have in common that they rely on a drug delivery system. And without one, they will be immediately degraded in the body. So lipid nanoparticles, or LNPs, are the drug delivery system for translational gene therapies. And quite simply, they're a very small 100 nanometer size molecule that's basically a membrane in which you can stick your gene therapy payload. And once injected into the body, it binds to its target cell, it's internalized, and then that outer protective membrane is degraded and the gene therapy is released. And all of that allows you to do things like gene inhibition, addition, replacement, editing, whatever it is that helps you kind of resolve that disease. So there are disadvantages of current LNP options. One, synthesized LNPs produce an immune response and they're toxic, so we can't use them long term. And natural LNPs, which contain lipids found in our own bodies, are poor at packaging the drug payload. And what gets into the lipid nanoparticle is not effectively delivered to the site of action. So all of this to say, we cannot use current standards in the treatment of chronic disease. So that's why we have developed the Chronos, what we're calling the Chronos lipid nanoparticle, which is our proprietary LNP formulation. So why Chronos after an ancient Greek mythology character? Because we want you to remember two things, that the Chronos LNP is for long-term delivery and the treatment of chronic disease. So our formulation addresses every failing of past formulations. It's all naturally derived, so it won't produce an immune response, and it's non-toxic. It packages the gene therapy payload effectively, and we can use it in the treatment of chronic disease. It also has a number of other applications, including tissue-specific targeting and imaging. It's been used currently in vaccines, and we can develop more. And lastly, it's been established with RNA payloads, but essentially we could use it with any gene therapy payload, which expands the number of diseases that we can treat. And with that, I will hand it over to Cody.
Thanks, Jennifer. So what is the market we are trying to attract? Well, first, we want to look at drug delivery system manufacturers, because these companies will require a naturally derived LNP formulation that effectively captures and delivers the payload chronically. Next, we'll plan to look at the market of gene therapy companies, which will require an LNP that can be used for extended delivery of gene therapy payloads. Next slide. Now, recently, this space has received a lot of attention, and this has a lot to do with the success of the modern mRNA vaccine against SARS-CoV-2, and a number of companies have moved into the LNP and gene therapy space. But what makes ours different is few of these companies have developed anything that can be used long-term. In addition, our intellectual property includes a one-step assembly method that allows for efficient LNP encapsulation. We are at a very critical juncture where we can offer, we are at a very critical juncture where we can offer the market something that doesn't exist yet. We are opening up the space for translational gene therapies in the treatment of chronic diseases with a method for safe and long-term payload delivery. Okay, now next slide. Thanks. So first, we have designed a strategy to corner this market, as you can see here laid out in these milestones. Within the first 6 months, we want to raise the necessary funds to do a more extensive preclinical validation of our LNP formulation, specifically through the model of vascular disease, which has already been set up in the lab of Dr. Mountain. This will require further ex vitro and in vivo testing, enough to extend our license or sub-license formulation to established LNP biotechnology companies that are capable of manufacturing a product at higher scales. The ideal company partner will be one that already has the experience, the laboratory practices, and protocols in place, and we can get our product moving down a pipeline very quickly. Then we want to license our formulation to biotech companies in the gene therapy and drug delivery system space. And so far, we have attracted some interest from some companies who could benefit from our license. But currently, we believe that some more in-lab validated experiments will be enough to warrant an official licensing of our intellectual property. Next slide, please. This leads to our business model of what we have dubbed the plug-and-play nanoparticle. This can be useful for many types of companies targeting a vast array of targets. All the company has to do is choose their gene therapy payload, pick their disease, and Kronos will provide the mechanism to deliver it. We can actually modulate the tissue specificity and offer exclusive options based on the particular disease, as opposed to just offering a single license to our LNP. Through this, we are actually maintaining the primary control of the IP and creating multiple revenue streams with continued potential for expansion and partnerships. Next slide. And while that is our primary and immediate goal, we do want to propose a more downstream option. And this would be actually forming a company and buying the license from University of Tennessee Research Foundation for the exclusive rights of our IP. Then we'd produce, assemble, package, and distribute the LNP ourselves. Next slide. So here's what we're asking for. Initially, we just want $176,580 to support Dr. Mountain in her preclinical validation studies. I know I'm over time here, but I'll just keep going. We'll use this to cover the technician, postdoc equipment, microfluidics chamber, which is only a one-time purchase, and cover any additional running experiments. With this, we'll be able to generate enough data that will make our LNP more attractive to even a wider array of licenses. This is our initial firm ask. However, we think it is worthwhile to add something of what we want after 6 months, within the 6 months to 1 year range. And that's when we're proposing a plan to start a company so that we can assemble and distribute our LNP in-house, thus retaining more of the revenue share. For this, we are roughly suggesting $500,000 to start the company and establish a lab. We believe that with achieving this milestone and a full understanding of lab costs, personnel, experiments, and a 12 to 18 month runaway, we could potentially leverage a more lucrative channel to retaining the revenue from our LNP formulation. And with that, I would like to thank the team and we'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's open it up to the facilitators acting as the panel for any questions.
All right, I think I'll go ahead and start. So you mentioned that your proprietary LNP has higher efficiency of drug encapsulation. Have you done any studies to show that, and how do you think that'll translate to different types of drugs in the market?
Yeah, so I didn't really dig into this, but there are some unique properties of this lipid nanoparticle, including this what they're calling dual functioning peptide, which is for assembling cell penetration. So this is what gives this naturally derived lipid the ability to encapsulate at a much higher rate than most naturally derived lipid nanoparticles. They've actually confirmed the 99% rate for RNA payloads in the lab. So yes, that's been validated.
Follow up, Ryan, or anybody else have another panel question?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in and do a quick intro also. Isaac Rodriguez with Sweet Bio. I've been in Memphis for the past 9 years and started Sweet Bio from one of my technologies that I invented in the lab 7 years ago. And we raised about $6 million to date and got our product through the FDA, through Medicare coverage, and about 15 patents so far internationally. So excited to be here and be a part of the panel. So thank you for this presentation. Yeah, I guess I have a question on the FDA side of things and how that goes into your plug and play model. So you mentioned you would ideally love to license it to a company, and then the company would then pursue their 510K based off of your technology. Typically, it's really hard to do that unless you have a 510K. Then they're really excited about it because they're not doing the work. So I guess, can you talk to me more about some predicate devices, if it's a 510K, that are on the market, and how you can relate your product to that predicate device so it's kind of more of a sure bet for these companies when they license it, that the regulatory pathway isn't so uncertain?
Yeah, so we kind of have 2 steps going with that right now, where we were licensing it out to a company and then they were going to do the FDA approvals and stuff. Jennifer, do you want to add any stuff about the 5-10K?
Yeah, I mean, I think into what's already been done. So the Moderna vaccine is a great example of using the LNP with an mRNA. So that kind of pairing of a gene therapy with a lipid nanoparticle has already, been approved and obviously been used. We would obviously need to do this validation as well, because this would be for chronic dosing and different translational gene therapies. But in terms of lipid nanoparticles already being in use, that definitely has been approved for in humans. I hope that answers your question.
Is that approved or cleared? Like approved through a PMA class 3 drug pathway, or cleared through a 510K medical device?
I'm not sure I can answer that one.
Sure, that's going to be a big question, because
Okay.
that's a 510K is a 90-day review process through the FDA, and you need to have a device that you're comparing yourself to. So you need to say, like, if the Moderna vaccine is the one, then what is their pathway? How did they get through? And that's likely not a medical device, because it has an action on the body versus controlling what happens to the device itself. So you may need to switch up 510K to something else, whether it's a class 3 or PMA or combination device within the CDRH combination device, the regulatory branch for the FDA. So just diving a little bit deeper into that, because that will be an initial question from any medical device investor. It's like, okay, so you said 510K, what's your predicate device? And so you have like an answer to what you're comparing yourself to, but just you can find their summary online and see what pathway they went through. And even if it's not a 510K, that's okay. Like, you're being upfront about what your pathway is and what they went through, and that's how you're able to get it through also.
Oh, that's super helpful. We will definitely look into that.
Side note, this is being recorded. It'll be uploaded on YouTube. So everything Isaac just shared with you, you'll be able to go to about 17, 18 minutes in and see that again.
Okay, sweet, because I was writing down figures.
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer questions afterwards too, so no problem.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Sure. Any other questions? I think 2 is probably good. That's a good test. And Isaac, I apologize. I never actually handed it over to Ryan to do his introductions.
Yeah, no problem.
My bad. It's hard being the host sometimes. So let's give team 1 some feedback. Who would like to go? Who would like to start? Shelby, Ron, Isaac, Ryan.
I can jump in real quick. I really only have one piece of feedback for this whole cohort. I think that you guys are pretty good with your pitches. It's pretty impressive. So one of my things is to make sure that it doesn't sound like you're reading. And I don't mean that as a criticism, but it is really tough when you're pitching over Zoom and not in person, because you have your notes right there, right? To sound like you're reading. So just practice it a couple of more times and try and get your cadence down properly to make sure that it doesn't sound like it's rehearsed too much or that you're reading. Something that's helpful is recording yourself and listening back to it section by section so you can hear your own cadence. So yeah, just kind of a general piece of feedback, but good job.
Good.
No, Shelby, that's great. And just to piggyback on that, if you do have a script that you're going to read from, have it up like on half your monitor or on your screen so that you're still looking at the camera or looking at the screen and not looking down, looking up, looking down. So that can be helpful. So judges think you're still, pitching from memory, even if you're not.
Yeah, that sounds good. We can definitely do that.
And, I love it when I see more than one person we've talked about this, the dangers of doing that. And for me, the only danger I saw was, just saying next slide. If you're going to have the script and y'all both are going to have your pieces of script, just put a little, share, Colby, share yours with her, sorry, I'm getting all mixed up with Jennifer. So she knows, exactly when you say something or trail off on something on the end of a slide. Instead of you having to say next slide, she can just kind of move forward. But y'all just got to practice that too, right? So I like the way y'all are handing it off. It was very elegant. And now I present, and so I give you, I think is what you said. I thought it was great. And now I give you, Cody. So, and Cody, you picked up great and just kind of moved forward with it and everything else. I really think y'all have come a significant way again from just last week to this week. The deck looks well polished. It flowed very well. I like how you did the gray kind of shading over the areas you wanted to distract them from, to show attention to the spot that wasn't great on those two infographics. I think you took the other infographic out, if I remember correctly, the one that had a lot of stuff on it, but the big one that had the 4 pieces and the dollar signs and everything else, that was really impactful. I also liked the way you did that and introduced everything on that first slide, which was that kind of grab you personified slide, right? It could have been, it was real busy last week, but now it seemed less busy, and it seemed to very much align with what you were saying. So I thought it was great. So overall, I think y'all are like 92, 93% there. You need to make sure you got everything spelt right and everything's lined up right and all the fonts. This is when you start doing the fine tooth comb type thing. But the biggest thing is practice, practice, practice. And I want to echo what Shelby was saying, record yourself, both video and audio. You'd be amazed at how you can kind of figure things out, because y'all were at 8 minutes and 9 seconds. That is not a deal breaker, but I would like to see that get down to by at least 30 seconds. And so some of those transition stuff might help you do that.
And Brian, I think that was spot on. I think you guys did a fantastic job. But one thing that we sort of were talking about is you guys should talk a little bit, even if it's for 20 seconds, about your team, because I think that's pretty important here. And it was sort of an afterthought at the end of the presentation. And I would have loved to hear more about, even if it's just like who they are real quick. I think that's important for investors.
Yeah, who's supporting you? It doesn't have to be like full-time on the team, but the professor, the inventor of the technology is our advisor, whatever it is, like that just adds some credibility too.
Should we do that first, or should we just keep at the end, but make sure to expand on it a little bit?
It always lands better, in my opinion, from the money I've seen, to do it at the end as part of your thank you, as part of this is what we brought you. You want to get into the meat of the narrative as soon as possible. I see a lot of times people try to introduce the team and almost like making it seem like the team is more important than the concept, right? And I'm not saying it's not, but you're there to present your concept, not your team, right? And so that's, I think, doing it at the end. I agree. I'd like to see a little time. So if you added 10 to 20, let's just say, cut it the difference, 15 seconds on the team to 15, 20 seconds on the team, it'd put you at 8:20, almost 8:30 in minutes and seconds. So I think both of y'all need to go carve out probably 15 to 20 seconds in each one of y'all's pieces.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Brian. I would say, like after your fundraising slide, we typically do that too. It's like, and here's a team that's going to make it happen.
Right.
It's
Right.
So it's after
That's a good
all of this, like
transition.
here's a team that's going to make it happen for everything that I just talked about. So there's a few questions that I think you'll get that you don't have to put in the presentation. So this is just feedback for being ready to answer any questions. But how are you going to get paid? How much does it cost to make? How much are you going to sell it for? Those type of business questions will likely come up. On the fundraising side, asking for 176,580, I'd round it up to 200,000. Like, it's kind of a weird ask to have the $80, but you can say it is exact. And there's also a buffer. Like, you need a buffer in there too. So bringing it up to 200 is a nice ask. But if you're going to be fundraising 6 months after that, that means you have to start fundraising immediately after you close that round, because it takes a good 6 months to fundraise a round, for especially a $500,000 round. So I would almost ask for 700,000 and say we want to tranche it, and we're only going to collect $200,000 up front, and then after 6 months, once we hit these milestones, then the investors can give us the rest of the 500,000. So that could just be a way to say, like, we're asking for 700. Here's how we're going to break it up. We only need 200 up front, and once we hit our milestones, then you can give us the rest of the money. That's probably a better way to structure the round, so you're not spending every 6 months fundraising, because then that's going to knock out one of your team members for the whole year just doing fundraising, speaking from unfortunate experience.
And if you present it,
go ahead, Ryan.
If you present it like that, I mean, you're going to cut out probably another 20-30 seconds out of your presentation. So that's getting your time back right there.
I really like that idea. I think we definitely will do that.
I do too. And it actually coincides, and Isaac, you have history in this too, a lot of with the 3-year FDA process too, in tranches, right? They want to give you the pieces so you can get through each section. If you don't get to the next section, you haven't already spent the tranche next. So I really do like that. I think that's the right way for y'all to go. I agree with you, Isaac, completely. Thank you very much for bringing that up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to team 2. So let's see, withdraw co-host. So who is presenting for
Yeah.
team 2?
I will. Today I present, but next week Diana will present.
Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to find you in the list. Okay. Okay. What is going on here? Why is it not giving me the button? Oh, there we go. Okay. Technology. Okay. I made you co-host.
Can I start to share my screen?
Yeah. There you go.
Right. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we see your screen. Go ahead and try to test putting that into, the full screen mode. Perfect. Oh yeah, looks
Can you
great.
see it?
Yep. So when you're ready, I'll start the clock.
Okay. Today I will be myself, so I will look at different place. So I'm sorry. We can start.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Igor. I'm the CFO at Blockseed, and today I will talk about our startup. Did you know that we expect to have more than 10 billion humans on Earth by 2035? It's crazy, I know, and feeding all these people has already become a matter of national security. The worldwide demand for food is expected to increase by 80% by 2050, which will require an increase of crop production to nearly double in order to sustain this projection. The seed market represents more than $100 billion, of which 30 billion represent new generation of biotech seeds. Indeed, the challenge in increasing the production is pushing more and more farmers to move towards biotech seeds, and it's expected to surpass the conventional seeds in the coming years. The challenge in the market is today, first, it takes between 7 to 13 years to be able to market a new variety of seeds, which considerably slow down the progress achieved in agriculture. We must be able to generate new varieties quickly, especially in the event of disease that can destroy crops and impact worldwide food demands. In addition, there are only 11 crops that are genetically modified today. This is mainly due to the high cost of GMOs and their profitability, but also to the complexity of their genome. Today, we should be able to easily modify any crops to improve their traits. Finally, we have a very high consumption of pesticides, which endanger the ecosystem, and we have to find new solutions. To address this challenge, we developed the Blockseed technology. What is Blockseed technology? In short, this technology is a better way to produce new crop varieties with improved traits, yield, and biosecurity. The 4 values for our customer will be the performance, the risk control without pesticide, the catalog, which will answer specific requests depending on the geography, and our unique technology. Because we are using blocks and don't target genomic DNA, Blockseed can generate much cheaper seeds and 60% faster than current methods. If we compare our seed engineering technology with other available technologies in the market, we can see that a new seed variety costs at least $1 million with conventional crossing method and up to $130 million for genetically modified crops. This cost is mostly due to a very long period of research and development before to come to the market, which we hope to decrease to 3 years, which also decrease our cost as low as $600,000. Our technology is targeting chloroplast and not the nuclear genome, for which there is no regulation unlike the standard GMOs. And finally, we would like to generate pest and disease-resistant crops without requiring any pesticide. To summarize our technology compared to standard biotech GMOs, we are targeting chloroplast rather than genomic DNA, so there is no pollen drift risk and give us a high standard of biosecurity for our crops. This gives us the advantage to be protected from the hard regulations spread by GMOs. At Blockseed, we plan to have 2 revenue models. First, we have a B2B segment where we would like to share our technology and give a possibility to everyone to profit from the advantage of our technology. is why we create a new service that we call Seed as a Service. And on the other side, we would like to create our own seed and create a B2C segment and create a brand identity for our customer. Just a quick view for our Seed as a Service. We would like to propose a pricing that depends on the request of our customers and specifically push them to do co-development projects so we can be involved and make it easily available for everyone to access our technology. And this will help to create new seed variety for low cost for everyone. And for our own seed product, we targeted 2 markets. The first market will be the potato, as is the one of major crops in the United States, and the cannabis plant in order to produce a high value compound that can be a proof of concept for big pharma. For our potato line, we are overexpressing tuber protein, which gives bigger potatoes, and we already validated in the lab and are looking for a field trial. For the cannabis, it will be an overexpression of cannabinoids, so it's another niche market that we are targeting. Block seed is not just seed, and there is a big team behind it that we didn't finish our slide yet, but we have team members with business-to-business expertise to license for technology, expertise in molecular biology, and operational skills member. We also have experts in this field that follow us and give us important feedback and give us their knowledge on the agriculture that some of us doesn't have. We have different milestones for our startup. First, we would like to start the field trial for our potato line by the end of this year and do marketing for our 2 B2B services. We hope that by next year, we can get our first B2B customer and get our potato line in the market with some farmers, and hope in future to have our cannabis line in market and many other seeds by co-developed project or developed by ourselves. To achieve our goals, we are looking to raise in share $250,000 to finance the next 12 months. These funds will pay the salary of our team and lab expense, start the field trial, and for the B2B marketing. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any question, I will be happy to answer it. How much time did we take?
You have 13 seconds remaining, so that's perfect.
Okay.
So Ugur, I have a quick question. I'm going to start with another science question. And I don't know the answer to this, so I'm hoping you do, but why is there no regulation on chloroplast engineering? Why isn't that considered GMO?
It's different because what we are doing on the GMO, when we target the chloroplast doesn't go to the descendant. So we don't have any risk of, how I can say, that can be transmitted to the next generation.
There's no germline insertion.
It is a good answer. It's very somatic.
Okay, so every generation, you have to start over every generation then, correct?
If we have a block that we call the plasmid, we can transform easily. So yes, which give us the opportunity to sell each year or seeds. It's what the GMOs company does too, but in our case, we need to, yes, sell each year new seeds.
Okay.
I have a quick question on the biological side of seeds, and I didn't see anything comparing to seed coating. So I know like Indigo Ag has a biologics division here in Memphis, and they coat seeds with different antimicrobials, different agents to resist various microbes or pesticides. So how does that compare to, I would love to see that kind of in your chart as another competitor in the market, but based off of just, have you heard of them before? And could you tell me how you're different if you have heard of what they do?
There are different ways to make the seeds resistant to pest or disease. in her case, what we would like to do is to do some screen with different overexpression of proteins and see which protein can help us to make them resistant. But yes, there's, as you tell us, some microbial way to protect from this, or to add some pesticide resistance, which then you can use synthetic pesticide specifically. But in her case, it will be more by screening and try to identify which protein we can overexpress to make them more resistant for some disease or for some pest.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be a great column to have too, and just say like coated seeds. This is why we're better, just in your competitor analysis. But appreciate the answer. Thank you.
One question. So it sounds like your block seeds has sort of universal applicability. Can you maybe talk a little bit about why you sort of chose, I think you mentioned just potatoes, and maybe, I forget what the other one was, instead of, is there a particular reason you go after like high value cash crops or something which has a large value for individual seed, or you could go after large scale? Can you maybe speak a little bit to that decision?
First, yes, we can apply for any seeds, but our aim is not to do by wholesale. So the aim is to try to get some B2B customer that will be happy to work. For example, there's buyers that are very good on maize, etc. So despite to try to compete with them, we would like to show that our technology can also help them. So to create a new maize with our technology and let buyers knowledge for the market to help us to go to the market, because we don't have all the infrastructure for producing in large scale. So we would like really to create some collaboration for long term and not licensing, but co-develop some products. And
but there's no particular reason you'd be preferred to go after a particular subset of crops or a particular type of crops. It just depends purely on the interest. Okay, thank you.
We had one quick follow-up question to that, to Rohan's question about potatoes. When your initial, I think, total addressable market was 100 billion, how much of that is potato?
Good question. I didn't check. I decided to look at potato, but I don't know if you the answer for your question. I know that is one of the major crop in the United States. In the world, I don't know, because the 100 billion is in the world. So it's probably one of the major, because potato is important everywhere. So
wait, so is the 100 billion is potato alone, or that's all potential crops?
No, the 100 billion is all the crops.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably going to get a question like that. Why potato? If that's a $2 billion market, what's like the $50 billion or $10 billion market? What's next?
And this is a great chance to like introduce some humor. It's like, we're not talking small potatoes here. We're talking like 20 billion, $50 billion. You can this is a perfect time to introduce that. But yeah, that was a big question we had, is like, I love the focus on potatoes, because it's just like, if you're solving this huge problem, it's like, where are you going to start? So the focus is great, but the opportunity for the return on the investment on the market size wasn't as clear, because 100 billion, that's great, but is potatoes 1 million? Is it 70 billion? There's just no, we weren't sure. So that's where that question comes from. But definitely introduce some like humor there with big potatoes and small potatoes.
So good. Yeah, I would keep this in mind. And if we don't have this question, you can ask, so I can add my more.
There you go. You got a planted question, a planted potato question.
Yeah, I don't know the value, but 359 million metric tons potatoes were produced worldwide in 2020. That's a lot of potatoes.
Yeah.
That's a lot of potatoes. Those are big potatoes. Well, I mean, large amounts of potatoes.
So we expected a bigger one.
Yeah. But that maybe that's what you can get to, right? 359 million metric tons of potatoes, I guarantee you, is a large segment of that $100 billion, right? So, I think all the comments and all the questions were leading you to a few things. One is, you need to be a little bit more informative on why you chose certain things. So like potatoes is a good example. You chose potatoes. Why? Give us some background. Doesn't have to add more than, a couple of seconds or a few words of statement just to back that up, right? You're at 6:47, so you still have some time. And I told all of y'all that if you're between 7 and 7:30, we're not going to say anything. That's just fine. So you have a little bit of buffer to play around with. Can you go to the competitive competitive matrix slide? Okay, now go down one from this one. So the DNA engineering, risk of pollen drift, high cost and regulation, those are for sustainable oils and Monsanto and these other ones on the right, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, the only issue I have here is that you've kind of weighted them stylistically to exactly the same, right? So at first glance, DNA engineering, most people are going to know, is that bad or is that good? I kind of heard him talk about it. I know this is chloroplast and everything else, but obviously when someone says risk, they're going to go, okay, risk, that's probably bad. High cost and regulation. Okay, these are these. But it took me a while to kind of figure out that the ones on the right were those for the ones on the right, and the ones on the left for the ones on the left, and one was good and one was bad. So just play around with that. And then go down one more. No, that's a good, I think this is a great slide. And again, stylistically, I love y'all's deck. I think it's really good. I like how you pull in this little red tape is the way I look at it, kind of like red, it just looks like red tape, and you're calling attention to those things too, and good ways and bad ways. It just stands out very good. Now go down 2 more slides. Keep going. No, you're going the wrong way, the other way.
The down. Okay.
Yeah. Nope.
Say
that one right there. First of all, no one said anything about this, but seed as a service is hilarious, by the way. I'm a technologist.
We talked about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I live in the tech world, right? So I'm like, SaaS with seed. I love that, right? And you just stick with it. So I think that's great. That's also adding some of that comic element. There'll definitely be some chuckles, at least internally, to the geekier people in the crowd. This slide, I didn't get it so much because it didn't, you didn't spend a lot of time on this slide. I kind of get it, but I think this is another area where you're going to get some questions, right? So just make sure, going back to the advice we said earlier, is that you have some good facts to back these up. Why is it 7? Why is it 6? What is those kind of things. But I really wanted to make the comment more about seed as a service, but I do think this is an area that you'll be questioned.
Okay. This I was not sure if it's required because we are showing some pricing, but this pricing will probably change depending on our B2B customers. But just to show the idea.
I get concerned when you put pricing on there that you can't validate. And a lot of times you can't validate something like this until you get further into the market. It's all speculation. Yeah. So at this point, if I was a listener and I was a VC, I would look at these numbers and I would think they're speculative. I'd also look at the numbers as being as high as they are and saying, well, okay, I really want to find out more about that, and stuff like that. So I would question this slide. So my point of that is if you don't have a lot of factual or at least validated theory or, validatable theory for this, you don't have to have this slide in there.
Okay. Nice.
Because you don't do a forecast slide, right? You don't have a slide that says you're going to be making this amount of money in a certain number of years, right?
I would like to ask this question. Do we need a financial forecast slide?
Well, if you're going to have this slide, you definitely need to have a forecast slide, and you'll still get questions. I mean, let's put it this way. For everyone, I'd prefer to put it in. But I've also told everybody that if you're not there yet, meaning as a company, you have not gotten past the last set of trials in some cases, or the last bit of lab work to get to a design and manufacturing kind of process, then you don't know yet. And that goes back to the advice Isaac was giving earlier. It's like, think of things in tranches. Then you got to get to milestones to get to this. And one might be 50,000, one might be 150, and the third one might be 500, right? To get you a total of 700,000. But that's, if you're just not there yet and you just don't know, for me in this instance, if I was on the other shoes, I'd appreciate someone not giving me stuff that's very, very fluffy, and someone give me stuff that actually they can validate and back up. And if they can't validate and back up, they're not giving me the fluffy stuff just for the fluff. Right. So, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's like, if you're going to have this in there and can back it up, then definitely put the forecast slide in here. If you can't back this up and you think this is really just guesswork, then I'd pull back on it a little bit.
There you go. Thanks for the feedback.
So there's one last thing I want to say, and this is for everybody. There's the whole thing of like this panic mode. That's why we wanted to we didn't tell you ahead of time, and that's why we kind of are asking these panel questions just to kind of, you know, put it back and kind of present it back to you. Like, you're going to have to defend. Now, all or most of y'all have been through thesis defense and everything else, so it's kind of like the same thing. You got a panel that's going to be asking you questions, challenging you, and you have to defend your position. This is the end of the world is lying. The end of the world is not saying, I don't know. Believe it or not, saying I don't have that information available at my, you know, right now, but I will follow up with you with more information. And I would love to talk to you about it further after this meeting. Right. So you can kind of just be transparent and say, I don't know. Because the last thing you want to do is start reeling off things that aren't anything to do with their question. Or you don't want to start spooling off a bunch of BS. Fake it till you make it is not good advice. So saying you don't know and referring to you will find out and get back with them is okay. I mean, that's the best thing over the other two, right? And it's okay to ask them to repeat their question. Sometimes I do this too. Sometimes you'll talk too much. You'll say the question at the beginning and you'll forget to say the question at the end. And then all of a sudden you've really convoluted the entire question before the person can even ask. So don't be afraid to say, do you mind repeating the question? Because every single time they'll do it more concisely.
Okay.
Okay. Team 2, anything else? Any questions for us? Any other things for everyone else?
Thank you very much for your feedback. No question.
Great. Okay. Team 3. Who's presenting?
It'll be Madison.
Madison, okay. Making you co-host right now. All right.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to minimize myself so I can't actually see the time, but if I go over, can you just kind of like say something? It'll just like stop me so I know to cut it down for next time.
Sure. I'll just tell you when the time is up.
Okay, that would be perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'll start when you start talking.
Oh, sorry, not ready. I'm just trying to move this around so that it's not in my way. Okay, so 65 million. This is how many people in the world suffer from epilepsy. With nearly 3.4 million people suffering in the US, it is said that in the US, 1 out of every 26 people will develop epilepsy in their lifetime. That means that it is likely that someone you know probably has epilepsy. So let's talk about it. So what is epilepsy? Epilepsy is a chronic neurological condition characterized by recurrent seizures. Seizures are the result of brief disturbances in the electrical activity of the brain. It can affect people of all ages and has a wide variety of causes. From infections to head injuries to genetic causes, it can even be difficult to determine the cause sometimes. Even after decades of research, nearly 1 million Americans taking their anti-seizure medications still experience seizures. Patients who have tried 2 different medications without seizure relief actually decrease their chances of finding medicine that will control their seizures to under 5%. So our problem is drug-resistant epilepsy, which is defined as seizures that persist despite appropriate treatment. Nearly 1/3 of epilepsy patients suffer from drug-resistant epilepsy. This means that nearly 20 million people worldwide and 1 million people in the US suffer from drug-resistant epilepsy. And in the last 20 years, there has not been a significant reduction in the number of patients suffering from drug-resistant epilepsy. And untreated epilepsy can lead to seizure-related injuries, whether that be falling or breaking something or getting into a car accident. It can increase the number of times a person visits the ER. And finally, epilepsy also often occurs with cognitive disorders like anxiety and depression. And if your epilepsy is uncontrolled, it is likely that you will suffer from more anxiety because you are so worried about when your next seizure will occur. So current treatment options, although numerous, as evidenced by 1st generation, 2nd generation, and 3rd generation anti-epileptic drugs, all display redundancy in trying to suppress seizures. On top of the limited treatment options, many of the anti-seizure drugs are accompanied by adverse effects, including but not limited to tremors, hepatotoxicity, weight fluctuations and cognitive disturbances, and serious behavioral changes, including aggression, and also renal complications. Further emphasizing the insufficient and inadequate treatment options for drug-resistant epilepsy patients. So our solution to these current problems is our novel anti-seizure drug, JW65, which targets a previously unexplored therapeutic option for the treatment of epilepsy. JW65 offers a novel target with high selectivity, long-lasting therapeutic effects, good brain penetration, and potent anti-seizure activity, while providing less adverse effects than other anti-seizure compounds, all of which synergistically combine to make a revolutionary treatment option for drug-resistant epilepsy patients. So compared to our competitors, JW65 offers a high therapeutic window and a longer plasma half-life than 5 other common anti-seizure medications from 3 different generations of drugs. This means that JW65 will have longer lasting effects and will provide more dosing options for patients when compared to others. So in December 2021, we were granted a $1.1 million grant to further develop JW65 and alternative compounds. We have since published 2 peer-reviewed papers about JW65 that detail its potent anti-seizure effects and limited adverse effects. Going forward, we plan to apply for SBIR grants to further de-risk JW65, as well as perform specialized studies that would enable us to apply for an investigational new drug clearance. Once we have obtained IND clearance, we hope to partner with pharmaceutical companies in the anti-seizure drug field, where we would license JW65 out to them and have them conduct clinical trials. So here's a schematic of what our go-to-market strategy and business model may look like when we are finally able to go to market. Our plan is to acquire more evidence to support JW65 and obtain IND clearance. And then once there, we would then license out JW65 to companies who would conduct clinical trials related to our compound. Then from there, the pharmaceutical companies we partner with would sell the approved drug to pharmacies who would then distribute the drugs to patients, and investors as well. Insurance companies play a large role in the distribution of JW65, as they will set price limits for manufacturers and pharmacies, but also they will influence what medications are covered for patients. Following insurance companies, doctors will also play a key role, as they are going to be the people prescribing our medicine. So sales representatives engaging with doctors will be critical to establishing our compound in the market. And finally, government regulation at various stages of development and distribution will be incurred. So now let's talk about our potential for revenue. On the left, we have figure 1 that shows how much a person with epilepsy spends annually and the different percentages that it's spent on. Down here at figure 2, we shows the average amount insurance companies will spend on people with stable versus uncontrolled epilepsy. Based on these figures, we were able to calculate the total market size for the US to be approximately, for 3.4 million people, to be approximately $50 billion. This takes the total number of patients times the total cost for insurance companies. However, for drug-resistant epilepsy patients or patients with uncontrolled epilepsies, insurance companies expend nearly $10,000 additional dollars per year on these patients. When we consider how much insurance companies are willing to spend on JW65, if it is lower than $10,000 per year, we would be able to save them money, making them more likely to cover our product. Therefore, if we tap into even, a small piece of the nearly $10 billion extra dollars insurance companies are spending on drug-resistant epilepsy patients, we should be in good standing. So our ask is for $60,000, which will cover the expenses for about 6 months of research, and this will put us in a better standing to apply for SBIR grants to further, to then be able to apply for investigational new drug application. So this is our team. We have Dr. Wei Li, who is the founder and IP holder, James Walter as our business and regulatory advisor, Dr. Lexiao Lee, a postdoc researcher, and then myself, who is a PhD candidate at UT.
Okay, thank you, team 3. Panel questions?
All right, so I'll keep the trend alive and start it off with another scientific question. Well, first I'll say, Madison, fantastic job. I think a lot of these slides were really detailed. I think you did a great job. But my question is, so what's the demographic of drug resistance epilepsy? Does it affect kids at all? Like, can kids be prescribed drugs for epilepsy? Do you know?
Yeah, so children can definitely suffer from drug-resistant epilepsy, but I don't actually know the statistics on the occurrence in children, and dosing children is a little bit different than dosing adults. And so when you're first trying to break into a drug market, it's harder to include that pediatric population when you're just trying to get FDA approval.
Okay.
And since I'm unmuted, I'll follow up with the questions here then. For the 60,000 for 6 months, that's $10,000 a month that you're going to be needing for studies. So I'm assuming you're not paying yourself, or you're going to be a full-time student, or can you just explain a little bit more about what the breakdown of costs would be for that and where it will get you?
Yeah, so we again struggled with this week. I wasn't sure how much to ask for because we were saying we were applying for these grants. So we tried to break it down to the lowest cost possible. So yeah, I thought that was a big debate for us on like how much to ask for, because we're trying to apply for these grants, but we don't know if we're going to get them. So we like need money to get us to the point where we can apply for this new drug application. So that might be something we tweak based on kind of suggestions from the audience today.
Sure. Yeah, definitely right on there. Like, go higher. I mean, grants, everyone knows here is like a lottery ticket also. So you never know who's going to be reviewing, if they're reviewing it during breakfast, so they have a good day or a bad day. So yeah, I would definitely say like pretend like you're not going to get the grants.
Okay, that's what they told us last week too. But then we looked up the price of the grants, and it was like $250,000. I'm like, who's going to give us $250,000? So okay, we'll
you can get 250. You can get one.
But
okay.
Yeah. I mean, 250 is not. That's actually on the lower end of some of the grants.
Oh, yeah.
Phase 1, yeah, you can get.
That's NSF phase 1, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, we did look into it, and I was like, that seems crazy. We shouldn't ask for that. Okay, we'll
you
definitely
should ask for what you need to do it on your own.
Okay.
And then it also is like very good to say we are applying for federal funding, and if you get it, guess what? Like the investor's dollar gets almost doubled, right?
Yeah.
So then you get to hit more milestones on their dollar. So you need to raise this amount of funding to get to this milestone. However, we anticipate that, we hope that we're able to get a grant to support this, and if we do, that only extends our runway. And that's going to make investors very happy that you're doing that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I had a quick question. So you talked about these sort of first, second, and third generation drugs.
Mhm.
Can you sort of talk about, why there are these sort of 3 big categories, and sort of the main point you're trying to make by talking about these 3? Is it to just talk about the extent of research that's been done on this, or you can show the generational differences?
Yeah, so I can elaborate on this. I don't know if it'll exactly answer your question. So anti-epileptic drugs are just generally categorized into 3 sort of cohorts. The reasoning for that cohort, I'm not totally sure, but I do believe it's kind of when they were approved or when they first hit the market. There's very little differences between first generation, second generation, and third generation in their like mechanism of action. They target very similar types of, I guess, ion channels, and they target very similar things, but it's just the safety often gets better and better and better. And while yes, it's improving, it's still not great. Like if you compare like some cognitive disabilities that people suffer when taking anti-epileptics to something like another drug, there's a lot more like side effects because they're messing with the brain as opposed to some other peripheral organ. So we are just trying to like follow what's in the field already and then kind of emphasize like the limitations of these different drugs.
Okay, thanks. I think that most answers, but I guess so in that sort of framework, you wouldn't really consider yourself like a 4th generation, or is it completely out of the set of categories? And maybe it's kind of a pointless question.
No, that's totally fine. Yeah, we were talking about that because we don't actually know the delineation for the different categories. I don't know if we'd be considered a third or a fourth generation. I think it depends on like when our approval kind of gets rolling. But that's kind of why on this slide we were trying to like highlight ourselves, saying we're not really a third generation or a fourth generation. We also did want to just have our compounds stand out on this sort of matrix.
Okay, no, thanks. I think that works.
Okay. So that's it for the panel questions. Let's open it up for feedback. I'll go first.
Yeah, no, yeah,
go
I
ahead,
can
Brian.
go. Unless Brian, you're probably going to say the exact same thing. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, Madison, I think the slides were fantastic. They were jam-packed with information. Sometimes it could be a little overwhelming with the amount of information you had. And I think the part that was the most overwhelming was that first 6 or 7 slides where you're introducing epilepsy. I think you did a fantastic job, but I think it took too long to get to, hey, this is the problem. What's the solution?
Yeah.
But I'm sure Brian's gonna say something along those lines.
I agree with that. I wasn't going to say something along those lines, so I'm glad you brought that up. But I did notice that as well, and I do agree with that. I think, I mean, I was actually struggling with it's almost like you just kind of jumped in with the number, right? 65 million, and almost like it was almost like a shuttered start, right? So make sure you say hello and just kind of warm the crowd with at least one opening statement before you jump in. From that point, though, I think everything else sounded extremely well. I also think the deck looks really, really good, but I do think you can go on a science diet. And I think that's kind of what Ryan was also alluding to. There's a lot of stuff going on. It looks really good. Just look for areas where you can kind of pare it down a little bit. But I wouldn't change what you said necessarily, right? Because again, I thought 2 things, about you, Madison. One is like you flowed very well, very comfortably. It did not seem like you were reading a script. To me, it seems like you know everything you're talking about. And then to pivot to the panel section, even in the areas where you didn't know the complete answer, you didn't lack confidence in your response to not having a complete answer. And that's noticed, right? And so what I said before you even started about not knowing how to have an answer or not having an answer to a question, but being confident about saying you don't know exactly, but you also gave some information that you did know. Those are great opportunities to follow up with those person if you feel like you had more information, right? That's an impressive move when people remember the question they couldn't answer fully and they work diligently to get the answer to the person asked it. That leaves an impression. So I think, from a delivery perspective, you probably sounded the most comfortable. I think you sounded like you weren't reading a script. And I don't think everyone else sounded like they were absolutely either. I think everybody's kind of very close to the same confidence level. But Madison, you seem to already be there with your presentation. So I thought that was really good. The one things that I would say that I would tell everyone to take out of their vocabulary is we hope, we plan is the better word. So we plan on doing things. We all know life's not guaranteed, but planning is also not a guaranteed thing, but planning sounds better than hoping, because that's one step away from a wing and a prayer. Then the last comment I have, so the last comment is like, just in one small little place, I think you pushed the forward button and then the DRE number showed up.
Yeah.
Only you know that you messed up. We might say it's the DRE thing for half a second, half of us, but none of us are going to think twice about it either. So, and that was a very, very small mess up. So I'm using your very, very small mess up to also say to everybody, again, no one knows when you take a little trip there, because you're the only one who's done your deck and everyone else is seeing it fresh except for us. So don't really worry about it, and certainly don't let it derail you. You didn't let it derail you, but just be conscious of it. And then the last thing I'll say is, the grant thing, I think for y'all, since you bring it up, certainly the hope thing out of the way, but you could also introduce the idea of the word de-risking, because that's really what it does. And you alluded to that too, Ryan. When an investor has the ability to come over or on top of or after a granted program related, like an NSF phase 1 or phase 2, you open up doors for matching. Most every single state that I know of, or every state that I know of, has like up to $300,000 for matching for phase 2 and double and 1-for-1 matching for phase 1. So you can get a lot of money. And then, so let's say you had $750,000 as you needed it over, excuse me, 4 tranches over 18 months. But that $1 million was 500,000 or $700,000 was taken care of through grants and matching and stuff like that. Hang on one second. Excuse me. Then you only have $300,000 to raise from an investor who's then coming on top of the government giving you money, plus your state giving you money. It really de-risks the investment for the investor. So you could actually introduce that both as a strong statement of we're going to go after grants because we feel like this might de-risk or will de-risk our early stages through these programs. So investors will see that we've got the backing from the state, we've got the backing from the government, however you want to say it. You know what I mean, I think.
Yeah.
So that's all good. But I thought your presentation was really good.
Thank you. Thanks for your feedback, guys. It was definitely really helpful and things like we hadn't thought about. So
Yeah, one minor point. I think you did an excellent job sort of staggering a lot of the information you did early on. But I think maybe later on when you were showing some of those, figure 1 and figure 2, maybe apply that same sort of staggering over there so you don't just overwhelm with like a page of 5 graphs all at once.
okay, sure. Thank you.
And your time was 7:15, so you don't have to worry about anything from a time perspective. No one really does. I mean, team 1, yeah, you're at 8:09, but I think the areas that you're going to cut out pretty easily. They'll get you below 7:30. Team 2, you're at 6:47. I mean, I wouldn't suggest adding 45 seconds more, but you do have a little buffer. And team 3, you're right at 7:15. So I think that's good. Any more feedback for team 3 before we kind of give general feedback?
I just have one question. Did I speak too fast? Because sometimes I have a tendency to speak very fast. So I wanted to know.
I didn't sense
Ryan,
that.
what do you think? Let's take a vote.
Yeah,
Ryan?
no, I don't think so.
Shelby says no. Rohan?
No.
Ryan? No. Isaac?
No.
Me? No.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Sure. Yeah, I just have
I'll tell you the test is you never seemed out of breath and talking straight for 7 minutes.
True. That's
If you're
true.
going too no, I mean, seriously, if you're going too fast, if your pace and clip is faster than normal, talking 7 minutes, you're going to run out of breath about 75% of the time. That's not statistical. Don't quote me on it. But enough experience, enough experience. I know what I'm talking about in that regard. You didn't run out of breath. So
Show us the data, Brian. Show us the
show
data.
us the data. I'm going to start collecting data now. I'll get back to you in 2 years.
That's awesome. No, I mean, you did a great job, Madison. I just kind of I love your slides. I agree with kind of what everyone said so far about it took too long to get to the solution. And then I love your side effects slide. Like that really resonated with me, like how you're going to be a little different. Competition slide, that's what up here is great too. So kind of Brian transitioning into the overall feedback, I think is for you, Madison, but also for everyone. And we try to do this now too. So like Brian mentioned, you start off with a number, which I was kind of excited about. I was like, okay, where's this going? And then because I've never seen that before, you always have like an introduction slide, right? Like this is the company name and you have a tagline or something. So I think it could work if you have your script around that. It's like, hi, my name is this. We're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about epilepsy or something like that. And it's just like you divert the attention towards the problem. That could be a very unique way to introduce yourself and the problem. But overall, what I would recommend to all the teams is start with a very quick intro, like your name and maybe title, but name at least, and then a 1-sentence pitch about your company. So for us, it'd be like, hi, my name is Isaac Rodriguez, like Chief Science Officer at Sweet Bio. And, we are using honey in a new way to help to help wounds close. I mean, maybe it's super simple, but it's like, what's the audience getting into? We've got that feedback over and over and over. It's just like, okay, by the time you got to your technology slide, I didn't know what area you were in, how to start positioning myself. So if you can just give a 1-sentence overview, like pitch of like, we're this, and it's not even the technology, but the high level problem you're solving and a little bit about the technology. We tackle epilepsy, not through non-drug resistant, something like that. It's just so people understand kind of what they're getting themselves into to set the stage. That one sentence like has helped us so much with getting people to follow our presentation rather than focusing on, oh, what are they tackling? What's the problem? Like, because if you present a large problem, what I think one of the other companies did, or two, you present a large problem and then you get smaller. It's like, okay, I got my head wrapped around a large problem and now I got to start focusing smaller and focusing smaller. So it's just easier to just set expectations up front with a one sentence pitch and introduction. That's for all the companies. And we try to use that everywhere we go. And even like in networking events, there's no such thing as like a 30-second pitch. You have like one sentence to talk to somebody.
We discussed this. We discussed this, everyone, if you remember, it wasn't a long conversation, but we said the 10-second, 60-second, and you build upon those. That's what Isaac is saying. I mean, if all you have time for is you're just trying to deliver the best 5-word sentence that describes your product, right? I mean, Uber for dogs, whatever it is,
Yeah.
Airbnb for birds, I mean, these are the statements. Trust me, I don't quote me again, but I bet you there's somebody who said Airbnb for birds, right? But that's the one statement that you make that is kind of your 10-second pitch. It's one sentence, 2 sentences, or just several words. For my little studio, turning concepts into companies. I'm Brian Behringer. I'm the CEO of Flow Venture Labs, and we turn company concepts into companies. Or you can also do, like in this case in particular, you can kind of, because Isaac brought this up earlier too. I mean, jokes and joking and levity are good, even when you are talking about something, or even just more cordialness. Like, I don't know about you, but 65 billion is a really huge number. Well, that is the number of blah, 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 right? Just something to kind of walk into it. I think that's what Isaac and I are saying the most.
Yep.
Okay, other questions? Okay, good job. So just kind of go to the larger statement. This was a great. I mean, I'm not going to speak for them, but if I do, you can echo this. The rest of the facilitators. I mean, you have made progress every week. We were worried about giving you praise sometimes. I was personally, as a teacher, you kind of always do that. Like, am I going to give you praise? And then are you going to start backpedaling a little bit because now you've reached the teacher's expectations? Y'all didn't do that. You kind of kept the foot on the pedal and moved through every week, accelerating through the end. And we have one more week. So now my natural expectation is, another week of full speed ahead towards delivering what you did tonight in the same way. Now that you've done practice, most, if not all of our feedback were minor tweaks, right? Most of our changes to your deck were minor. Many of them you can choose to take them or not. Our feedback on your scripts and our feedback on your general delivery was minor, and most of which, I mean, all of it constructive, most of which we were very impressed and very pleased about. Again, correct me if I'm wrong with my fellow facilitators. So I think going into next week, we probably have the strongest 3 decks that we've had as far as the total goes. I think the IP presents extremely well in these 3 decks by the 3 teams. So, I mean, I'm sorry, y'all have set my expectation bar extremely high, but that's y'all's fault, not mine. So, you're doing great. I'm gonna say it again, because this is not a dead horse that will even care about beating. Reach out to us. Isaac as well. I mean, if we need to grab Isaac's time, we'll coordinate with Isaac as well. But Ryan, Rohan, Erica is on travel, pitching her own business right now, but she'll be back next week. Myself and Shelby, please reach out to us. We're not going to do office hours tomorrow because those are like 20-minute increments. I'd rather y'all just kind of reach out to any of us and multiple of us and schedule time next week. I want you to take everything we've talked about tonight through the next few days, make some changes, schedule some time Monday through Thursday for us. Please practice in the mirror. Please record yourself, practice into your friends. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. I'll hand it over to my facilitators to see if they have anything to add as well.
I don't really have much to say. I mean, I'd say, I think you guys did a pretty good job of this, but, be enthusiastic about what you're presenting about, there's cool stuff. You guys are doing new things, and you're competing against really big companies. So, be excited about the exciting things, how well you're stacking up against the competition. But otherwise, I think you guys did a great job. Don't really have much to add.
Toby?
Agreed. Echo what everybody says. Good job, and good luck next week. Y'all are going to do awesome.
Yep. Rohan, Isaac. I mean, not Rohan, Ryan and
Not
Isaac.
Rohan, but you were close. It starts with an R.
Right.
And ends
Ryan.
with an Isaac.
Sorry. My bad.
But no, just to like reiterate what everyone's saying, I don't think we've had a pitch practice this, I don't want to say flawless, but you guys were really well prepared. Like usually people are like reading from paper, like their slides are half done, and that's like a week before they're supposed to be pitching. No matter how many times we practice and emphasize that, like get prepared, get ready. You guys are ready to go. Like, I mean, listen to our feedback, but you don't have to, implement all of it. I think even if you presented exactly the way you did tonight, you guys are going to do great.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great step. I mean, I wish I had a program like this when I was going through either grad school or just after. I started the company after postdoc and learned through just 0 to 510 and then on my own afterwards. So the fact that you all are doing this on your spare time, and we as a state of Tennessee like really appreciate your investment in this, because we need more technologies that are not sitting in the lab, that are actually commercialized and helping patients heal. And that's like, I'm a big advocate for that. So just one, thank you for allowing me to tag in here and ask some questions based off of my experience. But I appreciate the opportunity. I just kudos to you all to being where you are today, because it takes companies sometimes a year to get to where you've been in a couple months. So it's not easy to do, especially in a skill set that you haven't studied and that you haven't experienced. So just kudos again. And this is like an honorary MBA or honorary science class, depending like what your background is, if you're in a business or the science side. So this is just real life experience. And like Brian said, we're here just to answer any questions, and hopefully you all are motivated to continue afterwards and make this a success. And we're still going to be here to help you get those investors and continue to push the technology, because the patients need it. You're presenting real problems and real solutions. I hope that this is just the beginning of something awesome.
All right. Any questions from any of y'all?
I actually have a question for Isaac, but it's totally for personal reasons. So if everybody else wants to go before I ask, that's fine.
No, this is going to be recorded on YouTube and it's streaming live right now. So please go ahead. No.
I was just going to ask a little bit about your company. You said you're based here in Memphis. Like, do you hire, like, kind of can you give me the spiel?
Yeah, so right now, so we've been around for about 6 or 7 years, since 2015. So 7 years.